More than 35 years ago, Italian industrialist Carlo De Benedetti bought a small tanning business. Since then, he's turned it into a diversified industrial company, and today his son Rodolfo runs that business in what's called a near-seamless intergenerational transition. We're in Milan, and we're actually speaking with Rodolfo Benedetti now. Welcome to INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you.
Okay, the company is called CIR, or CIR, Compagnie Industriali Riunite. It's listed on the Milan Stock Exchange, as is the parent company. It's kind of a little bit, we want to get into the bottom of some of this labyrinth a little bit. It's one of Italy's leading holding companies. You have 4 businesses. Can you tell us kind of what they are and which one might be the biggest growth engine?
Sure. We are, as you said, a diversified holding company. The media business, Espresso, CIR bought control of Espresso about probably more than 20 years ago. And the automotive component business, Sogefi, was started and founded by my father about 35 years ago when he started CIR, and has changed and grown a lot over the past few years, but it's still in the portfolio. So this to say that we can be very long-term investors in businesses. The 2 other businesses, we have created them in the last 13 and 10 years respectively. The energy business, Sorgenia, and the healthcare business, COS. We started them in Italy from scratch, and we have since developed them into significant players in their own sectors. We are today the leading player in the long-term care part of the market, and we believe that over the next 10, 20 years, the continuous aging of the population will make it a growth market, even if the Italian economy is not doing very well right now. The energy business is a different story. We entered the business in '99 when the European Union imposed on member countries to open up and liberalize the gas and the power markets. And we thought that that was a discontinuity that would create an opportunity for an entrepreneur to create a new business and to become a player in that business, which we have pretty successfully done in the last 13 years.
You've been with the company since 1988. You were abroad before this. You studied abroad?
I studied abroad and I worked abroad, and then I came back here in early '88. Willingly,
or did Papa call you back? A little bit.
Half.
And then you've been the CEO since 1993. How have you shaped the company? What has your imprimatur been since then?
When I joined the company back in '88, it was a difficult period for our company. What I went through in the first few years with the other people working in the company has been really to try to streamline the corporate structure, to make it more simple, to get rid of a number of intermediate holding company, and you found that our structure is relatively complicated today. It was much more complicated in the past, so I think we've done a great deal in terms of simplifying. We had different classes of shares. We've transferred all that into one class of share. We have bought back a significant amount of our stock and canceled it. We've also tried in the last 12, 13 years to develop those new businesses, and so to complement the existing portfolio. And we have tried in the existing businesses to further develop them. And the automotive component business was started as mainly Italian business. This year I think we'll do probably about 7% of our sales in Italy, and the rest is done abroad, most of it in Western Europe. We have a big presence. We're a market leader in our 2 products in Brazil. So we have a growing and important presence in Latin America. We have a growing presence in the US, and obviously Asia is becoming the market to be in auto components and auto production. So that is also a big change. And in the media business, we have we've identified the digital revolution, I think, pretty early, and we've invested starting about 15 years ago to develop a digital part of the business, which is clearly the one that is today offsetting the decline in the traditional part of the business. I think the real challenge is how to transition from a traditional analog business model into a digital business model, which is which is clearly challenging because it requires different skills, and it's a much more broad market than the one that we used to operate in. But I think we are well positioned in this business. We have started early. I think we've achieved very significant positions in those markets in Italy. So we are confident that we'll be able to negotiate that transition.
You have also spent some time modernizing the company's corporate governance structure. What have you actually done? And then I need to ask you about kind of the women on boards situation.
I often joke saying that I run a company which is a combination of the worst, because we're Italian-based, we're family-controlled, and we're a holding company, which for investors is not the best combination of factors. So what we have tried to do is really to make us credible in the capital markets with international investors. And we have started when it was not compulsory. And so I think we've been a bit of a leading player in that, in trying to move our governance into a more modern one. So we have, since a few years, the majority of the directors in every one of our listed company are non-executive directors. And are independent members. So they are totally unrelated to the company or to the family. And we typically try to pick board members with as much as diverse as possible type of experience and backgrounds, both from academia and from the corporate world. I think we have a very strong group of directors. We have added a number of female directors in the last few years. And here too we've tried to anticipate what is now a legal obligation for Italian publicly traded company to have a certain percentage of female board members. And we're very happy with that, because it has added the right type of diversity and the right type of complementary experiences in our boards, and we think it has been appreciated by our investors and by the capital market.
Where do you find suitable women? Because this has been one of the big contentions. We'll never make the quota because there aren't enough suitable women, but you seem to be finding them.
Yeah, I think I don't find it very difficult, frankly, to find them. I think it's they're in high demand right now, because most other companies are late and they're catching up, and so they need to find more women. But I think most of it has been done by word of mouth. It's really talking to people and meeting people that are potentially good candidates, that are interested, that have time to devote to those board membership, because they take up time.
Now, analysts' consensus for your company seems to be buy, hold, underperform. Going back to your comment about being Italian, largely family controlled, and a holding company.
I think one of the reasons why there is some skepticism about our company today is that we happen to have a significant exposure to the Italian economy, which, as you know, over the last at least couple of years has not been the most fashionable place to invest. And so I think we have to convince investors that in this country, you could still run companies profitably and grow them and create value, which we have done for a long period of time, and which clearly is more challenging in those market conditions. But we believe that it can be done.
At the moment, it seems to be very fashionable to be beating up on Europe. The companies there, the continent between the Euro debt crisis. What's your take on that? Do you think it's a bad rap, or do you think there's some truth to it?
I think, as it usually happens, there is some truth, but maybe there is a bit of overdoing it and exaggerating it. I think Europe has structural problems. I think it's a rigid labor market. I think there are, at least in some countries, reforms that would need to be taken aggressively, and I think Italy is one of those countries. So I'm not denying that there are issues in Europe. But I think that probably some of the over-pessimism about Europe is maybe a bit overdone. I think the European construction has, the governance of Europe challenge. It's a relatively new construction, if you look at it with the perspective of history, and this is the first real deep recession that we're facing. And some of the issues that probably were latent are just becoming more evident, and therefore the need to address them, I think, is more urgent. But that being said, I think Europe is a large continent. There's about 500 million people living here. It's a very well infrastructured economy. It's a fairly rich economy. If you take the average GDP per person, I think it's a very stable environment from a political standpoint. So when you compare to some other areas of the world where clearly there are more growth opportunities, but there are also probably more risks, I think Europe is not a continent that I would write off, but certainly I think it requires to be, I think those structural issues need to be addressed both by companies and by countries. And this is what we're doing in some of our businesses where we consider that our core business is still in Europe, but we are trying to seize opportunity for growth outside of the European market. And in certain markets like the automobile business is mandatory. I mean, you have to be a global player if you want to be competitive in that business. We're doing a bit in healthcare. We have just entered about a year ago the Indian market, where we have a very interesting series of developments there. So we try to do both.
How would you make Europe more competitive?
We need to recreate some sort of economic convergence that I think we had in the first years of the European constructions, and which today, because of the issues that have come up in the last 5 years, I think we've backtracked a bit. I think the vision of creating a truly European goods and services market was, a great objective, and is something that has partly been achieved, and that has, changed the life of a lot of European citizens. I think it's still an incomplete process, and the risk that we are running because of those concerns that have surfaced in the capital markets about sovereign risks and about countries which are going through difficult paths, is that convergence becomes a divergence, and that we have differences in competitiveness that develop in different countries. And I think this is a real issue that we face today, and that we have to try to address. I think my conviction is that we need more Europe and not less Europe. I don't think our problems are, as some people argue, that we've introduced a European bureaucracy on top of the national bureaucracies. That may be a side result, and that's certainly not the best achievement that Europe has done. But I think if I look at the single countries where we do business, just having more Europe and having more of those structural issues addressed at the European level would just be, I think, good for our economies.
Now, in terms of your own business, 70%, more than 70% is actually in Italy, and the rest is in Europe. So, how would you describe the Italian market then?
The Italian market is right now facing a pretty severe recession. Our GDP is going to decline this year between 2.5% and 3%. Projections for next year are either a continuous negative GDP or flat at best. So I think we are going through a significant downturn. I think Italy's performance is worse than most other European countries, and I think this is due to a series of structural reasons that this government has started to address and is trying to address. I think this will require much more time, and so we are hopeful as operators in this country that whatever government we will have after next year's elections, there will be a growth agenda which will be at the center of the government's attention.
In terms of succession, I mean, you are the succession. How has that gone? What made it seamless, and what does that say about kind of your role in simplifying the corporate social or the corporate governance of the company? Because family business succession has always been an issue around the world. What made this successful?
I'm very thankful to my father, because 25 years ago he gave me the opportunity to work in this company. I have learned a lot. I didn't know a lot when I started. This was my third job. I had some outside experience both in Europe and in the US. And I came here and I really did a lot of different things. And for many years I worked alongside with him. And I think that this has been a great professional and human opportunity to learn. And I think that my father has always been kind of a forward-looking person in every aspect of his working life. And he recently decided to, he stepped down, as an executive in the business years ago. So this has happened over time, and it's not something recent, but he recently announced that he was going to hand over the ownership of the company to my brothers. I have two brothers and to myself. And we're very grateful to him to have been put in a position of really exercising, the ownership responsibility in the company, and hopefully we'll be up to the task.
Do you have any advice or any lessons you might suggest to other people who would find themselves in your position in family business, taking over the leadership role?
I have a very important advice, which is that I think gaining professional experience outside of the family business to start with is paramount. I would really insist a lot on that. I think it is important for everyone's self-confidence. It is important to come back to the family business with some baggage of experience and with the credibility of having done something in a different context, which is not your own family business. And maybe the second thing is that I think when you run a business which becomes sufficiently complex, you cannot just rely on the skills of family members. You need to combine that with external professional management. And it is very important to create a context which is based on meritocracy and not just based on family, if you want to be able to attract and retain and motivate external professional management, which I think is essential.
Are you grooming your own successor? You have 3 daughters. Would you think a woman could run this?
They're still too young to talk about that.
Let me end by asking you what challenges you think will be facing businessmen and women in the next, immediately the next year, and maybe a little broader term, the next 5 years or so. What should people be preparing for? What challenges are there?
I think the challenges in Europe is that we have been living through a difficult economic environment for 5 years now. It's a long time.
It's almost a new reality, isn't it?
I don't think we're out of the woods yet, so I think it's going to take quite some time for the overall economy to regain a decent growth path. And I think the challenge is to run companies through an extended downturn, because if it is short, you react, you cut, you restructure. if it is long, it's painful to do that for a long time, and I think that's the biggest challenge, because you cannot only cut, and you have to be able to, in the same time, look at the opportunities that this downturn creates and invest in those opportunities, and so be, selective in both cutting and in investing. And that is, I think, a challenging mission for anybody that has the responsibility of running a business. And I think the other thing is that, managing an increasing complexity. I mean, if I look at what the job of a CEO was 30 or 40 years ago and what it is today, it's, we live in a much more complex environment. It's a global world. It was not a global world a few years ago. It's a world which is changed quite dramatically and fast by technological evolution, which is becoming faster and faster, and so the pace of change is actually increasing and not decreasing. So you need to react, very quickly to this new reality. We are, I think, a company, a corporation in its society, has a much more complex role than just managing a P&L. I think, you have to look after, inclusion of minorities. You have to look out, you mentioned earlier, female participation, not only in the board of directors, but also in the whole of the company. You have, environmental concerns that companies have to deal with. The spread of communications and the development of social media, makes you much more visible, whether you want it or not, and I think you have to deal with that, and you have, you don't have to be defensive about it, but you have to manage it, and I think this creates a much more complex environment for whoever runs a business, whatever the sector or the country, and I think this is a complexity dimension that is relatively new, which is, I think, just going to get more complex.
But also offer opportunities.
Absolutely.
Rodolfo De Benedetti, thank you very much for being with us on INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you very much.